Since changing the name of the Eclectic Americana Friday morning drive time radio show on January 20th, 1989 to the Bushwhackers Breakfast Club, the DJs in the collective have strived to entertain and inform our listeners. Airing from 6 to 9 a.m. Pacific at KZSC 88.1 FM in Santa Cruz, California, the Bushwhackers usually have 2 interviews a week, each airing for about half an hour. We're not afraid to ask questions or admit that we don't know something, and we don't mind taking deep dives or following a tangent as we get into how sausage is made in local, county, or state politics, or learning about things going on in our community, or discussions with artists. Our interviews are not scripted and are produced by myself, Dangerous Dan Orange. Good morning, KZSC. You're on the air.
Good morning. Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays. It's the 5th day of Hanukkah, 6th night. You got a couple of days if you procrastinated for those chosen folks on your list. Christmas Eve tomorrow, Christmas on Sunday, Kwanzaa New Year. Our kids have a name mashup where they have all the holidays in one word, but I can Christmas, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah. Anyway, Gail Pellerin,
I love it.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So you are now our 30th District Assemblymember, is that correct?
28th District.
Oh, okay. I knew it wasn't 29 anymore. Okay.
Yeah. No, it got really, the redistricting commission basically divided Santa Cruz County, which is the second smallest geographic county in the state, into 3 assembly districts. But the reality is you've got 3 amazing people. We've got myself in the Harbor North. We've got Don Addis, the Harbor South, and then we got Watsonville with Robert Rivas. So, and I think Robert's the 29th, Don's the 30th, and I'm the 28th. And
Robert Rivas is slated to become Speaker of the House next July, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, very exciting. Yes, first time I think ever that we've had representation at the Speaker's office with the Central Coast, and his story of being in farm worker housing and working his way up to being the most powerful person in the state assembly is pretty exciting. Yeah.
Right. So the smallest, the smallest county in the state of California, or one of the smallest?
Santa Cruz County is the second smallest geographic area in the state of California.
And we are going to have outsized representation in Sacramento. So, yeah. Gail, I was looking back at my notes. We last chatted before and after the 2020 election. So 2 years ago, pandemic pivot, Republican Party unofficial drop boxes. We talked about voting in person or designating someone to drop off your ballot. So here we are 2 years later, and you have been elected to our assembly. You want to tell us a little bit about that, about wrapping up as our county clerk?
Sure. Yeah. No, it was, a great career. I loved my job of being in charge of the Office of Elections and Love, because I was also the Commissioner of Civil Marriage. But, I'd been working with some women's groups, and we had realized that we have never elected a woman from Santa Cruz County to an office higher than countywide. So we set our sights on changing that, and the plan was in 2024 when Mark Stone was due to term out. And so I tried to recruit a woman to do this, and it kept coming back to, how about you? And so I thought, well, I guess I'm up for this task. And for me, it is a bit of full circle, because I actually started my career working for a state assembly member in a district office, and then went to work in the Speaker's office, and I covered the assembly floor operation, committees, and budget. So I'm very familiar with how things work in Sacramento. And, of course, my plan was to run in 2024, and then I got the call from Mark Stone that he was not running for re-election, and so I had to pivot and jump in, and here I am.
So which assembly member did you work for as a staff member?
I worked for Rusty Arrayes back in the late 80s, and I lived in Los Banos, and his district at the time included Morgan Hill and parts of South San Jose, which my district today includes. So, I'm very familiar with the district. I have family over in Santa Clara County. My husband used to work over in Santa Clara County. I've got family there. So for me, it's a very comfortable district. It's a district I know, and it's just been getting to know, getting voters the opportunity to get to know me and earning their vote. So was busy out there knocking on doors and talking to voters and listening to their concerns. And as much as we feel like that great Highway 17 divides us, there's actually a lot more that unifies us than divides us between the two counties.
So how many years did you work for Rusty Arias?
I worked for him for a couple of years, and then I ended up working in the Speaker's Office of Majority Services. So a total of almost just shy of 8 years in the State Assembly, working for one or the other.
Got it. So then you are familiar with, gut and amend and the suspense
and all the rules.
file.
I was always a stickler for the rules. I memorized all the Assembly floor rules and the joint rules on how to, work legislation and move legislation. And as a result, the Speaker yesterday appointed me to the Assembly Rules Committee. So that will be an honor to be the committee that basically touches every single bill, because every bill has to go through for a referral to committee. So I will be able to be tracking every single piece of legislation coming through the legislature.
Got it. I was going to ask you about committee assignments. Have you raised your hand for any other committees or?
Oh, yes, indeed. And then the Speaker Rendon let me know yesterday that he's looking at making those other appointments probably the first of the year. So I did ask, of course, to be on the Elections Committee, which is something I know very well. And I also asked to be on Sub 1, which is the Health Budget Committee, and my work in the mental health space and wanting to make sure that we are continuing to invest in mental health, because it's been neglected for decades, and the results of that fact are, finding its way into our streets, into our people's lives, into our workforce, into our schools. So we really need to jump on mental health and provide the resources and services people need to live a thriving life. And so I've asked to be on that. I asked to be on Housing Committee and Natural Resources. So we'll see what ends up happening, but I'm just very honored and humbled to serve and represent this district.
Well, Gail, here on the Bushwhackers, we're not embarrassed to just shout out when we don't understand things or we need them clarified. You said Sub 1, health budget. What is so I assume that's Subcommittee 1
Yes.
of the Budget Committee?
Yeah, so the Budget Committee is broken into issue areas, and they each have a number, Sub 1 through, I think, 5 or something. And it's a little confusing because the Senate doesn't have the same subject matters in their subcommittee. So, our Sub 1, maybe their Sub 3, that deals with health, for example. So, but in any event, yes, that would be the committee that really does the deep dive into the budget requests and resources for that particular issue area.
So Sub 1 was health, specifically.
Sub 1 is health, yes, yeah.
Got you. Okay, and we'll find out about that in the first of the year. So Gail, you're just starting out in as your own assembly member. It's great to hear that you had 2 years working for an assembly member and then working in the Speaker's office for 8 years in Sacramento. So, like you said, you're familiar with the process and how sausage is made, as we discussed it with Mark Stone for so many years. But can explain to us how many offices do you have? I mean, you have one in Sacramento, but do you have only one office in the district, or do you have more than one office in the district?
So my intent is to have 3 offices in the district, that I will keep the Santa Cruz office over at the County Government Center. So it's kind of funny. They can't get rid of me. I'll be working on the same floor that I worked on as county clerk. And then I have an office over in the Morgan Hill Government Center. We have an office there that will staff on Fridays. And then I'm in the process of looking for a district office in the main part of the district in Santa Clara County, which would be Willow Glen or Almaden Valley. So we're looking to put an office there and then staff that. And
how many staff will you have, full-time equivalent, in each of your 3 district offices?
So the way the Assembly works, which is different than the Senate, is that we are given a budget, and then we have to work within that budget. But what comes out of that budget is office supplies, salaries, but also it includes any satellite offices. So members like me and Don Addis and Robert Rivas, who cover multiple counties, we're going to be spending money on an office space that could have gone to, that other members get to spend on salaries. So it's a little frustrating. So, and I've talked to Robert, Assemblymember Rivas, about, changing that. But for now, that's the way it's set up. And we have asked for some additional money because we want to make sure that people are provided a good living wage because, these are very expensive areas to live in, Santa Cruz and Santa Clara counties. So for now, I'm going to have, I've got a district director that's going to be coming on board. I've got one field rep that's been identified, and I'm going to have 2 more field reps. And the 3 field reps and the district director will be covering the district and staffing the different offices depending on what the need is.
I see. So you'll be
I haven't
paying.
figured out all the details there, but I'm very excited. I hired a chief of staff, Ashley Labar, who's incredible, and she's working in Sacramento. We've got a ledge director, Charmaine Mills, and a ledge aide that we've hired that was working with the campaign, Rhiannon Mulligan, and looking to hire a scheduler because that is a super important position because, keeping me on task and going to where I need to be and when I need to be there and the right location and the right phone numbers is really imperative for success in this position. So I'm looking for a scheduler right now.
If you've just joined us, folks, we're talking with Gail Pellerin, our 28th District Assembly member. So there are going to be 3 district offices, Santa Cruz, Morgan Hill, and somewhere in the heart of Santa Clara County. You're going to have one district director, and you're going to have 3 field reps kind of moving. I'm imagining like, the 3-card Monte or the shell game where you're moving them between those 3 offices. But then you started to tell us about your Sacramento office. That many staff will you have in your Sacramento office? You mentioned Ashley, chief of staff. You mentioned Charmaine, your legislative director, and you mentioned that you're hiring a scheduler. Do you have more than that in Sacramento?
Well, based on the budget I have, that's all the room I got. As a freshman member, you're pretty limited. So that's what we're going to have, and we're all going to be, chipping in and working working hard for the people of the 28th Assembly District. And me coming from a position of being a former staffer, I'm able to jump into those support roles really easily and do that work. So I think we're going to be a small but mighty team.
When you said that as a freshman, incoming first year Assembly member, that's all you get, are you implying that if you're in the Assembly longer, you have a bigger budget and can hire more staff?
Yes, as you progress in the legislature and you get maybe a committee chairpersonship or a leadership role, that will often come with additional staffing. So,
I see.
Yeah.
So committee chair or leadership, more staff. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's something that comes with multiple years.
Yes. So, and I plan to be there for multiple years. So hopefully I will continue to grow and evolve in this position and be able to grow my staff as well.
Well, curious, since Mark Stone termed out, what is the term limit for an Assembly member?
You can serve up to 12 years, and they're 2-year terms. So if you got tired of the campaign schedule, guess what? We're going to be firing it back up as early as probably September of 2023, because with the March primary, we are going to have to file in November. So, we'll hit the ground in January, and just those 9 months later, you're going to start hearing about campaigns and running for office again. So, not a lot of time to make your mark and get settled, and I'll be turning around and back up the campaign trail one more time.
Well, we've talked about committees, subcommittees, offices, and staff. If I remember correctly, bills need to be submitted by the 3rd week in January, and there's a final deadline, I think, 2nd week in February, but that's not far away. And for an incoming Assembly member who hasn't been there for years, first of all, either confirm or correct me on the schedule, and then let's talk about submitting laws, because, like you just said, hitting the ground running. Yeah,
no, for sure. And I should also say that I have also asked to establish a select committee on mental health. And there's not currently one in the state assembly side. And that would be a committee that would really do a deep dive into the issue with the stakeholders and work on formulating legislation in that area. So that's another piece that I'd like to do. And
hang on, Gail. Let's pause right there just for a second, because there are two types of committees. Select committees do deep dives into topics and can kind of recommend possible legislation, and the other type of committees that we just talked about, housing, natural resources, election, what's that type again?
So they will actually hear the bills and then pass them on to the next step, whether it be going into appropriations if it's a funding bill, or go directly to the floor for a vote.
Are those called policy committees?
They're standing committees.
Standing committees.
Policy committees, standing committees.
Standing.
That works.
No, I got it.
Yeah.
Standing and select. Okay, now back to the calendar.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's right. I don't have the calendar in front of me. And I've had a little bit of a calendar nightmare because I've been moving from a Google calendar to a Outlook calendar, and there's just lots of pieces. And but yes, I do believe that your time frames sound correct.
Got it. And I had that. I can commiserate, because when people send me meeting invites in Google, for example, my Microsoft-based Outlook kind of chooses to ignore it, and so I'm roadkill on the high-tech highway sometimes. So good luck. I know you're hiring a scheduler. Okay. Yeah. So Gail Pellerin, have you started working on some bills? Did you have some in your back pocket? What are you working on?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm definitely wanting to work on mental health, and as a member of NAMI Santa Cruz, it's a very complex issue, but there's, I think, some work we need to do there, and I've been meeting with stakeholders on that.
Can you help?
Got something formalized right now on that, but continuing to work with them.
NAMI Santa Cruz is?
National Alliance on Mental Illness. And so I've been a member of that group since I retired in December 2020.
Got it. National Alliance of Mental Illness. Is it a nonprofit? Is it a group that meets regularly, or is it somewhat associated with city or county governance?
It's a nonprofit, and it basically, we have our board, and NAMI provides, incredible services and programs for people who are, have mental health issues in their sphere. So whether, there's a peer-to-peer program, there's a family-to-family program, there is a program for providers. So it's just a great resource that is there for families and workforce when, providing guidance and tools to help us navigate through the mental health system.
And if people are interested in NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, how do they find out about it?
Well, I'm sure just a Google search of NAMI Santa Cruz would give you the website and then show you the different programs, and they have, different speakers and all sorts of things that they provide. And my hope is to, I believe March is Mental Health Awareness Month. I could be wrong on that, but I want to do mental health awareness fairs and get all the different groups and organizations together and provide, a family-friendly environment with booths and, food and fun games, and get people out to really understand what's available in the mental health resources area in our counties. So I hope to do that in March.
If you're just joining us, folks, we're talking to our 28th District Assemblymember, Gail Pellerin, former county clerk, and you were the Commissioner of Civil Marriage as well. Okay, now, given that you're new, you want to work on mental health, but this January, third week in January deadline is looming, and given what we learned through Senator John Laird and the Watsonville Hospital about gut and amend, where you submit bills that you have no intention of ever working on them, and then somehow they get into the hopper, and if something comes up, you take them out, you change every word, you change the name of it, and you're allowed to officially continue working on them. Given the magnitude of mental health and the mental health crisis, are you planning a gut and amend approach, or do you think you're going to have a bill ready for consideration by the third week in January?
Well, we're going to see where we go. I know we're doing some research on that now. I also, of course, being, having expertise in election law, I have talked to our California Association of Clerks and Election Officials on 2 legislative proposals I'd like to do, and those are in the system. So those have been submitted to Leg Council to start drafting that language. And so we're working on some election laws. We're looking at some possibility of a housing homeless piece of legislation. Currently, the state has 9 state departments that oversee, I think, 45 different homeless programs. And to me, that seems inefficient, that we need to consolidate those into one, department, or one, like a housing czar. So I'd like to be talking to folks about that and see whether that's something that's viable. And, there's other things that we want to do around, maintaining women's reproductive rights. And there's some issues around domestic violence I've been looking at. So, yes, we'll have a legislative package. Whether things are totally fleshed out in time for that deadline remains to be seen. But in the meantime, I could put in what we call a spot bill, which is basically something to amend like health and safety code and make it kind of simple and minor. And then that is the vehicle you could use to plop in your language once it's been vetted.
Eric in Santa Cruz corrected me and said Mark Stone did not term out.
He did not term out. That's correct. He decided not to run for that last term.
Right.
So as I said earlier in the show here, that I was planning on running for this in 2024.
Oh, right.
And then he called and said, hey, I'm not running for my last term. And that's when everything pivoted and I jumped in.
So we've got about another 3 minutes, Gail Pellerin. You said that you've raised your hand to be on the Housing Committee. You're on the Budget Subcommittee 1, which is health, and we talked about mental health.
I'm not on it yet.
Not yet.
Those assignments are to be made. The only assignment that's been made is Rules Committee.
But given Santa Cruz and homelessness and how the world went upside down when, the institutions where people suffering mental health issues were kind of tossed out of them back in the 80s, do we want to grapple with this topic, which just doesn't seem to go away? Do you want to talk for the last couple of minutes about homelessness, mental health in Santa Cruz?
Yeah, because it's a huge problem. It's a crisis. And we've got some great programs going on in Santa Cruz County. And believe it or not, we are housing more people. It's just that there's more people who are unhoused. And so just kind of catching up with that has been really, really difficult. And people are unhoused for a number of different reasons. It could be due to mental health. It could be due to addiction. It could be due to trauma. It could be due to, domestic violence. It could be due to a number of different reasons. And the bottom line is, or people can't afford their rent. So with the economy on the downturn, we need to also make sure that people who are in housing, who are in that paycheck to paycheck, barely making it mode, we need to make sure they stay in that housing and they do not become part of the unhoused. So we have that effort we need to be pushing on, and then we need to build housing. We need to build transitional housing. We need to be building permanent, long-term housing for the very, very low income, and make sure that we get people into shelter where they're safe, and then we need to provide them with the services they need to live a thriving life, including workforce development and skill development. And programs like the Homeless Garden Project here in Santa Cruz County is doing phenomenal work with bringing homeless folks into their program, working on skill development, working on finding them housing, and their graduation rate is extremely high. I think it's in the high 80s that people who get in the program within 3 months, have a job and have housing. So we just need to do more of that and make sure that the money that the state does have is getting into the hands of the people doing this incredible work on the ground. People like Phil Kramer and Elaine Johnson and Don Lane. And, we're just doing, a lot of work here in Santa Cruz County, and we just need to do more, and we need to do it faster.
Well, if I can put a bug in your brain, it's something that we discussed with Mark Stone, and that is that Santa Cruz is not the only city or county in the country that is dealing with homelessness and mental health. And if the state put money toward a an expert committee that would look at best practices nationwide. What are people doing? What works? Where did it work? Where didn't it work? To try and somehow not be just a bunch of everyone going off in their own direction trying to solve this problem. Can we find out what other people have done that works? And now that you're in Sacramento, maybe you can get some funding for that and put together some best practices. And we don't have to call it the Bushwhacker Recommended Committee. But if you did, we would be honored.
But
just a thought.
Yeah, no, and absolutely, because you don't want to reinvent something. And there are so many bright minds out there, and especially looking at this Assembly District 28. I mean, the work they're doing on housing the homeless in Santa Clara County also is phenomenal. They've got great people over there and incredible programs, and they're just, so yes, we can learn from each other between the two counties, and yes, we can learn among the other, 57 counties here in the state of California, and we can learn from the other 49 states. So, and we have, delegations that have gone to other countries like, Amsterdam to learn about social housing and Vienna, I think they were in. And so there's lots of creative things happening, in our greater world. And yes, we should be sharing those ideas and best practices.
Well, Assemblymember Gail Pellerin, thank you so much for joining us this Friday morning on the Bushwhackers Breakfast Club. Folks, Gail is going to be joining us the third Friday of every month, starting in January at 7:30, the first Friday of every month. We're talking to our state senator, John Laird. And Gail, thank you so much for filling us in on all of the stuff that's kind of laying the foundation for what, your next 2 years in the California State Assembly. And thank you for, humoring me and answering these questions like NOMI and the how different committees are named and whatnot. We will continue to ask as we move forward. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us.
So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to a podcast from an interview on the Bushwhackers Breakfast Club on KZSC 88.1 FM in Santa Cruz, California. This interview has been produced by myself, Dangerous Dan Orange. KZSC is a student-run college and community non-commercial educational radio station broadcasting from the UC Santa Cruz campus. You can stream KZSC online at kzsc.org. Thanks for listening.